passive voice. So let's move together through our active and passive voice, or active and passive sentences. Welcome. Let's move together. Now, in our active and passive voice, what do I expect you to get by the end of this lesson? While going through this lesson, I expect that at the end, we shall be able to know what an active sentence is, what a passive sentence is. We should very well know when somebody asks what is an active sentence, what is a passive sentence. So that is one. Point number two that I will expect us to know is parts of a sentence that are important to make this sentence of ours to be either passive or active. So what is important that makes our sentence to be called active or passive? Then point number three, under active and passive voice or sentence, we should be able to very comfortably change a sentence from being in active voice to passive voice. And also we should be able to change our sentence from passive voice to active voice. So let us move together and see what we have. And before that, I want to write here some 3 sentences, simple sentences that we know. Then we shall start from there. Now we have those 3 sentences on the whiteboard. The first one, the teacher is writing a story. The teacher is writing a story. Then in our second sentence, my mother sweeps the house. My mother sweeps the house. When we come to sentence number 3, boys painted pictures. Boys painted pictures. These are 3 normal sentences that we usually write, we usually speak them. We usually read in our books. Now, is this sentence active or passive? That's what we now come to ask ourselves. We have 3 simple sentences in different tenses. Is this sentence active, in active voice, or is it written in passive voice? Now that now forms the basis of our topic today, active and passive voice. So let's move step by step together. In this sentence, the 3 of them, we are going to look at 3 main parts that make these sentences. And those 3 main parts are what will guide us through our sentence. Now, I want to break each of them. I've broken them into 3 parts. Let's go to the first sentence. We have the teacher. Then the second sentence, my mother. In sentence number 3, boys. So this is the first part of each of the sentences. Then the second part, when we got the first sentence, the second part is writing. In our sentence number 2, second part is sweeps. And in our sentence number 3, painted. Then when we come to the third part of each of the sentences, when we look at the first sentence, we have a story. In sentence number 2, we have the house. And in sentence number 3, we have pictures. So these 3 parts of each of the sentences is very important. Each of the 3 parts is very important. So when you look, for example, look at the teacher, look at his writing, and a story. What do you notice? Or why have I broken that sentence into 3 parts? So the teacher here is a noun, and the teacher indicates the person doing the work. Similarly, my mother is the person doing the work in this sentence. And here, boys represents the noun that does the work. So the first part carries the doer of the work, or the doer of the action. Then when you come in the middle part here, in the middle part we have is writing. This shows the action is writing. Sweeps, this is the action or the verb. When you talk about painted, is also another action. So we have the doer, that's the noun, the doer of the action. The action itself is here. And then a noun where work is done, or the receiver of the action. So each of our sentences is divided into 3 parts. The doer, that's the first noun, the doer of the action, the action itself or a verb, and the object, which is the receiver. So these are the 3 main parts that you must know in our sentence. So you have the doer, and in our case, the doer is referred to as the subject. The doer of the action is referred to as subject. Then the action in our sentence is the verb. The action is the verb, and then the receiver of the action, the receiver of our action is the object. The receiver of the action is the object. So when we write any sentence, we have the subject, who is the doer of the action. We have the verb, which is the action itself. And then we have the object, which represents the receiver of the action. So in our sentence, when we write a sentence in this order, where we start with the subject, followed by the verb, and then the object, we say that this our sentence has been written in active voice or in active form. So you can call this an active sentence or an active voice, where we get the order as subject, verb, and object. So when we write this order, then we have our sentence in active voice. So I hope up to now we are able to all write any sentence in active voice. So when you are told active voice, just to make sure the order is subject, verb, then followed by object. As simple as that. And remember, subject is the doer of the action. Action is our verb. So the verb is the action that we have in the story, like writing, sweeps, or painted. That is the action. Then object in our sentence refers to the receiver of the action. So up to there, I'm very sure we are now able to write an active sentence or an active voice. Remember, starts with subject, followed by verb, and then object. So from there, we shall now move to passive voice. What's the difference between active voice and passive voice? What's the difference? The difference comes in the order in which we arrange our sentence. So we've said in active voice we start with subject followed by verb, then object. So up to there, I'm very sure we can write any sentence in active voice. Let's straight away move now to passive voice. How do we change our sentence from active voice to passive voice? How do we change our sentence? There are three important things that we need to consider so that we are able to change from active to passive voice. Which are these three things that we need to consider? Number one, and most important, is the order. While changing from active to passive voice, we must consider the order of subject, verb, and object. That's the order that we have to consider. So that is number one, very important. Remember, in the active voice, the order is subject, followed by verb, and lastly, object. While in passive voice, we shall start with object, followed by verb, and finally subject. Yeah, so we can check on the screen as we see the order. An active sentence is a sentence which is written with the order subject, followed by verb, and finally object. Then under passive voice, as I'd said, the order should be object, followed by verb, then subject. So once we know the order, then we are good to go. That is the order that we use, and that's the first one. So the order, we start with object, then verb, then subject. Object, then verb, then subject. That's the first rule. The second rule, while changing from active to passive voice, very important. The second rule is the verb. The verb tense. How should be the tense of the verb? That is the action. Like here now we have is writing. Here we have sweeps. And here we have painted. This verb, the tense form of this verb will have to change. That is rule number 2. Remember, rule number 1 is the order that affects subject, verb, and object. Rule number 2 is the tense of the verb. So all verbs must be changed and rewritten in past participle. The verb must be written in past participle. For example, the past participle form of the verb writing. The past participle form of the verb writing is written. The past participle of writing is written. The past participle of sweeps. My mother sweeps the house. Yeah? You can check. You can try. What's the past participle of sweep? Yeah, the past participle of sweeps hope you get it right, is swept. Then the past participle of painted. The past participle of painted is painted. So our rule number 2, the tense of the verb or the verb tense must be written in past participle form. And I'm saying past participle form and not past participle tense because it is not a full tense. So make sure this your verb is written in past participle form. Then the last but not least. The last but not least of the rules, remember I've said there are 3 rules. So the last but not least is the tense. The tense of the sentence. You have to consider in which tense is our sentence written. So number 1, you said you consider the order. And the order should be you start with object, followed by verb, then subject. Then rule number 2, the verb. The verb must be written in past participle form. Then number 3, the tense of a sentence. For instance, I look at our first sentence. The teacher is writing a story. The teacher is writing a story. When we look at the verb here, we can detect which tense has been used. Is writing, is writing. It means this is present because of is, and continuous because of ing. So our first sentence is in present continuous tense. This tense is very important. Then when we come to the second sentence, my mother sweeps the house. My mother sweeps the house. We again look at the verb. It is this verb that will give us the tense of our sentence. Sweeps. This is in present simple tense. So we can see this one is present continuous because of ing. This is present simple. What about number 3? Boys painted pictures. We also look at our verb, our action. Painted shows that our sentence is in past simple tense. So we find that our sentence number 3 is in past simple tense, our sentence number 2 is present simple tense, and our sentence number 1 is present continuous tense. So these tenses will affect something under rule number 3 of changing from active to passive voice. So after knowing these 3 rules and conditions of our normal sentences, which we usually call active sentence, what do we do? I now want us to go together and change each of these sentences. And I want us to start with the first one. The teacher is writing a story. The teacher is writing a story. We start with rule number 1. We start with rule number 1, which talks of the order, and we start with the object. So what's the object? The object is a story. So that is the object, a story. Then we go to the verb. Our verb is writing. And remember, we said our verb must be written in past participle form. We all remember, what's the past participle of writing? The past participle of writing is written. The past participle of writing is written. Then we finish our sentence with our subject. And remember, our subject was the first one. So subject becomes the last one. So when we write the subject as the last one, we say this action has been done by somebody. So we shall use the word by, then we add the subject. So in our case, it will be by the teacher, the last one. So written a story dash written by the teacher. A story dash written by the teacher. So we have skipped something here, which brings us to the importance of rule number 3. Rule number 1, we've changed the order. We've started with object, followed by verb, then subject. Rule number 2, we have changed our verb into past participle. The word writing becomes written. Then rule number 3, we look at the tense of our sentence. In which tense? The tense is present continuous. And in present continuous, we use is if our object is singular. And we use are if our object here is plural. So a story. Is a story singular or plural? That one from grade 1, grade 2, you know. The word story, a story, is it singular or plural? Good, I can get one getting it. The word a story is singular. So when we come to the tense of a sentence, we say a story is written. If there are many stories, then we could have said stories are written. So in our case, a story is written by the teacher. As simple as that. So we take our object, a story, comes first, a story, then is written. Remember, our verb changes to past participle form. Then our subject becomes the last one, by the teacher. And we look at the tense. In present tense, present simple tense, we use is. So we say a story is written by the teacher. That is simply how we change, we write our sentence from active to passive voice. Let's try and look at number 2. My mother sweeps the house. My mother sweeps the house. So we start with our object. This is our column for the object. We carry the object from this part to this part. So we have the house. Then we come to the verb. We change our verb to past participle. What's the past participle of sweep? Past participle? Yeah? Good. Swept. Past participle of sweeps is swept. Then we have our subject. We carry it from here, my mother. Remember, because we move this subject, we must add the word by. So, by my mother. We have looked at rule number 1. We've changed the order. We've started with the object. We've changed our verb to past participle. Then we have finished with subject, my mother. What remains is the tense. What is the tense of our sentence? My mother sweeps the house. Sweeps is in present tense. So in present tense, as I said in the first sentence, if the object is singular, we use is. If the object is plural, we use are. So the house is singular. not the houses. The house is singular. So we say the house is swept by my mother. That is our second sentence. The house is swept by my mother. Let's go to sentence number 3. Sentence number 3, where we have boys painted pictures. Boys painted pictures. We come to rule number 1. We look at the order. And the order is OVS. I usually say it is obvious because it is very simple. OVS or obvious. Object, verb, subject. So we come to our object, pictures. Then followed by verb, painted. And remember, the verb must be written in past participle form. That is our verb written in past participle form. Then we come to subject. We bring the subject here, boys. So we shall have by boys. So the first rule we've used, we've changed the order. Object, verb, subject. Then we have changed the verb into past participle form, painted. We now come to the tense. Boys painted pictures. Which tense is this? Past simple tense. And in past simple tense, as we shall see these helping verbs, the way they change, we shall see that in the next step. In past simple tense, if the object is singular, we use was. And if the subject is plural, we use were. So pictures, the word pictures is plural. So we don't use was. The word pictures is plural, so we use were. And we say, pictures were painted by boys. Pictures were painted by boys. So as you change your sentence from active to passive voice, ensure you remember these 3 rules. Rule number 1, the order. Rule number 2, the verb must be written in past participle form. And rule number 3, you must consider the tense of each sentence. And before I finish, I will give the breakdown of the helping verbs that we use in each of these different tenses. Now, on the screen, I want us to look at some more examples of sentences that we have that have been changed from active to passive voice. So let's have more examples of sentences on our screens that show the way we change from active to passive voice. That is apart from this, so that we have more examples. Good, so we can see the first one, it is written in present simple tense. We now want to change those sentences. I've organized all of them in present simple, then we shall have past simple, then after that we shall have jangled up. The first one, George plays football. George plays football. George is the subject, plays is the verb, and football is the object. And that sentence is in present simple tense. We have said we use is or are. So when we change George plays football, it becomes football is played by George. Football is played by George. The second one, we have girls take porridge. Girls take porridge. We shall say porridge is taken by girls. Number 3, my brother writes a composition. My brother writes a composition. A composition is written by my brother. Mary plucks guavas. Mary plucks guavas. Guavas are many, so we say guavas are plucked by Mary. Guavas are plucked by Mary. Then let's go to the next slide. We see past simple tense. Let's look at past simple tense in the next slide so that we have more examples just apart from these. We have past simple. We can see the first one. George played football. So I've changed just from present simple where it was George plays. It is now George played football. It becomes football was played by George. Number 2, girls took porridge. Girls took porridge. Also in past simple tense. Porridge was taken by girls. Porridge was taken by girls. Number 3, my brother wrote a composition. My brother wrote a composition. My brother is the subject. Wrote is the verb. Then a composition is the object. So it becomes a composition was written by my brother. A composition was written by my brother. The last sentence, Mary plucked guavas. Mary plucked guavas. When we change to passive voice, we start with object, which is guavas. Then the verb, guavas are many. Guavas were plucked by Mary. So in our case, Mary is the object, is the subject, so the subject becomes the last one. The object, which is guava, starts, and our verb, plucked, changes to past participle form. So guavas were plucked by Mary. Those are the examples in present simple tense and in past simple tense, where we use in present simple the helping verb is or are in our part number 3 of our tense, and in past simple tense we use was or were. Now I want us to move to the next slide where we have tried to mix up the sentences. Then we see if we shall be able to detect the types of tenses so that we change correctly from active to passive. Then from there, we shall move together and get a helping verb that is used in each tense so that we are set to go. Now, in jumbled up tenses, we have the first one. Anthony is washing plates. Anthony is washing plates. We have Anthony as our subject, is washing as our verb, and plates as our object. So which tense is this? Anthony is washing plates. Which tense is this? This is present continuous tense. We have present because of is, and continuous because we have ing in our verb. Present and continuous because we have ing added to our verb. So when we add ing, it makes your verb to be continuous. So when using any continuous tense and you want to change from active to passive, you must use the word being. For example, now here, the first rule or the first step is the order. Anthony is washing plates. So we shall say, remember plates are many, that is plural. We have plates are being washed by Anthony. Plates are being washed by Anthony. We start with object, followed by verb, which must be in past participle form. then subject becomes the last one, and we take care of the tense, present continuous. So we say plates are being washed by Anthony. Let's look at sentence number 2. He was watching a movie. He was watching a movie. We start with our object, a movie. Then we finish by a subject, by him. So we have our order. We start with object, then we finish by our subject, and we change our verb to past participle form. Past participle form of watching is watched. Past participle of watching is watched. And remember this sentence, he was watching. Was watching is past continuous tense. So when we use past continuous tense, remember when you use past tense, we use was or were, and because of continuous ing, we have to use being. Past and then continuous. If it were just past simple, then we use was or were alone. But it's past continuous. We use was and being. So he was watching a movie. We say a movie was being watched by him. A movie was being watched by him. We come to sentence number 3. They have stolen a pen. They have stolen a pen. We have they, that is the subject. We have stolen is our verb. And we have a pen, which is our object. Then we look at the tense. After changing the order, that is our rule number 1. After changing the order, we start with a pen, then our verb stolen into past participle form, it remains stolen. Then we have our subject, they. Now we have something unique here. They changes to them. Why? Just like sentence number 2, he was watching a movie. That he changes to him. That's because initially that pronoun had taken a place of a subject. Now when it takes the place of an object, we have this one, hope you've gone through. It changes from being subjective pronoun to objective pronoun. So that is why pronoun he changes to him, pronoun they changes to them. Like pronoun I am using I as the subject. When I take the place of the object, I changes to me. So I am talking, you are talking to me. So I changes to me. That is why you can see in our sentence, they changes to them. So they have stolen a pen. That is a present perfect tense. In present perfect tense, we use has or have. So we shall say a pen has been stolen by them. A pen has been stolen by them. Then we come to the next one. We shall eat fruits. We shall eat fruits. That is future simple tense. We shall eat fruits. So you say fruits will be eaten by us. You can see we is subjective pronoun, changes to us when it comes to objective pronoun or a pronoun that takes place of the object. So fruits will be eaten by us. Then I shall have eaten an egg. I shall have eaten an egg. We have I, which is the subject. Then we have shall have eaten, which takes part of our tense. Eaten is the verb, and an egg is the object. So we say, an egg will have been eaten by me. An egg will have been eaten by me. So that is how we change. And as I said earlier, the most important thing in changing from active to passive voice, the most important thing is, number one, we look at the order of the object, verb, and subject. Then number two, we look at the verb, which must be written in past participle form. And finally, we look at the tense. Now, as we move to the next slide, it will show us how these tenses, how each of them changes. For example, when we talk about present simple tense, I've said we use is or are. So we have the first tense there, present simple tense. For example, take or takes, that is the verb. Take or takes. You will use the helping verb is in singular or are in plural. So an example in a singular sentence, if I say, my mother takes a book, we shall say a book is taken. So when you have your sentence in present simple tense, you use helping verb is or are, followed by your verb in past participle form. When you come to past simple tense, for example, took. If your sentence is in past simple tense, then you will use the helping verb was. So you say was taken. The third tense that we have is present continuous tense. Present continuous tense. An example there, we have is taking. We have is and ing on the verb take, is taking. Remember I said when you have ing, you must use being. You must use being. So is taking becomes is being taken by. For example, my book is being taken by my friend. We have future simple, shall take or will take. Shall take or will take. It changes. We use shall be or will be. Shall be taken by or will be taken by. When we come to future continuous tense, I shall be taking or you will be taking. That one changes to my book will be being taken. Remember, when you have ing on our verb, you must use being. So don't forget that one. Then when you have shall or will changes to shall or will, and you also use being. So shall be being taken or will be being taken by. We come to present perfect tense. Maybe you can say, John has taken my pullover. John has taken my pullover. We say, my pullover has been taken by. So here we use has or have. When we come to present perfect continuous, here we have has or have plus our verb which has ing. For example, boys have been drawing a picture. Boys have been drawing a picture. We shall say a picture has been being drawn by John. Or John has been taking my book. My book has been being taken by John. Finally, we have past perfect. When you have past perfect, it uses had plus verb. For example, we have had taken. John had taken my book. It becomes my book had been taken by John. So that is how we change in consideration with the tenses that we have. Now with that, we have some questions that I want us to go through for assignment. We put it to consideration. the tenses, how the tenses change. We go through them quickly within 3 minutes, then we finish and finalize. Number 1, learners will draw plans. For each question, I'll give just 5 seconds. Learners will draw plans. Number 2, my sister cooks food. My sister cooks food. Tom was driving a bus. Tom was driving a bus. Next, the police officer has chased a thief. The police officer has chased a thief. These cows have drunk water. These cows have drunk water. And finally, your cat has been pouring milk. Your cat has been pouring milk. So those are the 6 sentences for assignment. So before I finish the next 1 minute or 1.5 minutes, let us look at the answers. Then you compare these answers with what you have got. So let's look at the answers and see, are we right or wrong? Number 1, plans will be drawn by learners. That one was learners will draw plans. So plans will be drawn by learners. Number 2, it was my sister cooks food in present simple tense. Food is cooked by my sister. Number 3, Tom was driving a bus. Here it becomes a bus was being driven by Tom. Number 4, a police officer has chased a thief. A police officer has chased a thief. A thief has been chased by a police officer. Water, these cows have drunk water. These cows have drunk water. Water has been drunk by these cows. Water has been drunk by these cows. Then finally, your cat has been pouring milk. Your cat has been pouring milk. Milk has been being poured by my cat. Milk has been being poured by the cat. So I hope you have been able to score at least, if very bad, then 4/6. So that brings us to the end of our English lesson today, which has been active and passive voice. And remember, the rule while changing from active to passive. Number 1, remember the order: object, verb, and subject. Then rule number 2, you must change your verb to past participle form. Rule number 3, you must consider the tense of the sentence so that you know which helping verb you will be able to use. And with that, you will handle any question under active and passive voice confidently and correctly. With all those, thank you very much for walking with me through this journey of active and passive voice. Until next time, thank you for watching and being there with me. Thank you so much.